It's another beautiful day at High Impact Motorsports, and we are talking to you about the SR620 project on the lift. This project has not been as straightforward as you might expect, and that has a lot to do with the integration between a 620 and a 720. There are subtle differences. Subtle things can lead to very big complications, especially on a project. In the meantime, let's show off what is right now. And what is right is this gorgeous front suspension that Darren over here has put back together again. So we've got our brake rotors and such, we've got our drop spindles, and then of course this is a 720, but we have 620 steering on here. So you notice where the idler arm used to sit, that's where the idler arm would have bolted. This is where the idler arm now bolts through. So now we got our idler arm. In order to clear the pan, this is rotated onto the bottom side. We used a taper bit and went ahead and got that correct. So now this is got the proper taper on both ends, and that's in, and then the outer tie rod over here, and that's gonna work out beautiful. Also, look at that gorgeous amount of clearance with an SR20 oil pan. That's pretty freaking awesome. A complication that we're running into is that the torsion bars still need to go in, and Darren over here is going to be working on that. Oh, yeah. So he's going to be taking in, we're going to be re-indexing the torsion bars to get the ride height where we want it. But the exhaust for this truck was made up before we got the truck. And this is the stainless steel header that was made, and it actually has a full setup all the way to the back of the truck. Well, I don't have the exhaust with me right now, but there's an interference between this pipe that goes right here, imagine that, and the torsion bar, because the truck had coilovers before on the other frame. So as usual, one more complication, 25 steps forward, 85 steps backward, but we're working on it. That's what projects mean. Projects take time because you're overcoming challenges. Let's talk about ride height for a second. We've got a lot going on there too. Here's a couple of pictures of the ride height, where we want to set it, and we'll let you figure out which one should be which. We'd like it a little lower. The goofed up part about this type of suspension and the fender fitment on these trucks is that the fender comes down and then kind of lips in right there at the wheel. And then this suspension actually widens the track out. So the problem we're running into is we need a plus 35 offset wheel if it's 7 inches wide. And that is very hard to find. But that's just another war for another day. Luckily, that's not our war to fight. Our customer is handling that one because the wheel fitment the wheels are his issue. So he's tracking that down. He's taking care of that. If you know of a 15 or 16 by 7 wheel with a plus 35 offset with a 6 on 5.5 lug pattern, let us know. Drop it in the comments below, and we will pass that information on to him. He's looking for something like an old school wheel, like a steel wheel that probably could put a dog hubcap on or something like that. Nothing too crazy or fancy, but again, we'll entertain anything. All right, Darren, what are we doing today?
Torsion bars.
Yeah, so we're gonna be indexing torsion bars.
Gonna learn today.
Yeah, gonna learn today, son. All right, so here's the procedure from the factory. You're supposed to, there's your installation torques, set the snap ring and dust cover, grease the splines, and then we set the lower control arm so that there is no clearance between the rubber bumper and the arm. Now, since we're lowering this, there is no lower bumper, so we're going to take an inch away. Actually, we're going to take a half an inch away from that. So whatever that bumper height is, we're going to take an inch away from that and get this in that position. And then our next step is to get that anchor bolt in position. So we slide it in so that this bolt protrudes out 37 millimeters, and then we tighten it down till we get this dimension right here, and then from there we can set the ride height, but we won't worry about setting the ride height until we get everything else dialed out. But in re-indexing it, notice that its C value right there is at 0. We're going to take a half an inch away from that. A half an inch over here is going to translate into at least a couple inches over here. So that will set us in the right ride height.
Scam likely.
So what we're going to do is we're going to measure this height of this bumper, and it's 2 inches. So I want 1.5 inches of clearance over here. So I'm going to take and run this arm up to about 1.5 inches right there, so that this point right here, distance between these 2 points is 1.5 inches. That'll get us where we need to be. All right, so now we've got the distance here set at 1.5 inches on both sides, and now we can go ahead and insert our torsion bars and get that set right. All right, so Darren's going to get that in there.
Right here we have our mark, 37 mil. To give it a verify, it's going to probably be about in this section here, which means this guy's going to end up somewhere about there. See the mark?
A little bit more there. Right, there's your mark right there.
Right. So we're going to probably end up about right here with the torsion bar.
Okay.
So, as long as I'm not too
I'm going to hold that right there.
Right.
Okay. And if you want to just tap that in, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know, Patrick likes hammers, right?
Yeah. Looks like I am going to have to do here. So one thing to note,
Looking pretty good.
when you read the manual, you might want to add grease to the splines.
All right, so Darren's going to insert that bolt in.
Oh yeah.
We're going to verify that we're at the right height. We're just a shade over it, but that's fine. I don't know if we could get it a different spline point down. All right, so there's our point right there. We've got that bolt protruding through. There's the seat. We're just a couple threads further, but that's fine. We're good. Something to note is put a little grease on your splines. Put a little bit of grease before you insert them, and it'll go together a lot better. All right, so now we've got our preloaded height correct. And so we're going to now tension these. We're going to put some tension on the bars, and we're going to run them up to about 70 millimeters. So from 37, we're going to run them up to about 70 millimeters per the factory service manual. Actually, let me check that spec. So the spec we're looking for is between 60 and 70 millimeters. So we'll probably just take it up to 65, which will get us where we need to be preloaded. All right, so we've got these set to about 68 millimeters now. We don't have a perfect ride height figured out yet, but that's where we're going to be at. The next step is you put the clips in so that your torsion bars don't walk out. So we'll get that done next, and then we'll probably drop her on the floor and see what she looks like. All right, so we're lowering this thing down onto the ground, onto its own wheels and weight. And yeah, that's pretty low compared to what it was. It's not quite at ride height yet. But let's get it parked over in the corner and get a side shot. I do think we're gonna make some adjustments to the rear suspension, try and get it down a little bit lower, and we might have to play around with how we're going spring-wise on it, because I do not like how that's sitting exactly the way it is. I'm okay with the height, I'm just not okay with the number of blocks and the way they sit and all that, so we're gonna play with that a little bit. We'll check that out. Hope you enjoyed watching us re-indexing torsion bars. Hope you learned something, and as always, have a great day, and we'll see you on the flip side.